Hey guys, it's Kat and I am back today to do a new review. Now this is going to be a multi-part review, maybe like a 2 or 3 part. If I can knock this out this weekend, I will be a very happy person because these sort of multi-part reviews usually take me at least a week to do. But I am reviewing the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palette in the shade Light. There's also a deeper version available. Now I haven't tried this. I've had this on my desk for probably like 3 months, just sitting, waiting. Look how metallic it is and how beautiful. This released ages ago, like end of last year. I know Natasha Denona has released quite a few things since. They've just released the Dream palette or My Dream palette or some collection that is a dream. I don't know. Doesn't really interest me too much. I'm sort of preferring smaller palettes, things I can sort of take in a makeup bag away for a weekend or whatever. Things I can just have in my bathroom and sort of like one and done products that I can reach for. So I like quads, I like mini palettes, sort of face palettes work well. So the really big sort of colorful palettes, I will still buy them if I really, really, really want them. But in terms of sort of everyday makeup, I don't really reach for them anymore. So yeah, they've been doing a lot, but this old palette is what I'm reviewing today. Now, when I did see this palette originally released, I thought it was a cool concept. And I liked that they had a light and a deeper version. I wish they sort of lent into this more and released like cooler tone ones, warmer tone ones, and sort of just really branched out, because I think this format's really everyday friendly for a lot of people. And I feel like sort of her big colorful palettes, even though they are very popular and they sell well and all that kind of stuff, I sort of feel like if you want to get people into your brand and people that might be a little bit intimidated by the big sort of colorful palettes, I think these sort of everyday palettes that you can put in your handbag and bring to work or bring traveling with you, I think it's a really good way to sort of get people to try your formula and try a range of products as well. So we've got a cream blush, a highlighter, and 5 eyeshadows. Now, the main reason I bought this, I think there's 2 reasons. Firstly, I've got a friend who was raving about it. And also I went in store and I swatched it, and these 2 shimmery eyeshadows, I was like, these are gorgeous. These look really, really beautiful, and there's something I want to reach for fairly regularly. So I decided to get it, essentially. So what I'm going to do today is swatch this palette for you, apply it on camera so you can see how it applies, sort of give you my first impressions, and then check back in with another look or 2. Because there's only 5 shades and they're all sort of really nude, I don't feel like I'm going to get a lot of variety in terms of the looks out of this palette. So this is more of an everyday sort of basic palette. So I might only do 2 or 3 looks and then conclude what I think about it. In terms of where you can buy this and how much it costs, I'm going to have a few links in the description box because it really depends on where you live. Natasha Denona is stocked in so many different countries, so I'm not going to have a list up for you, but I will have some links in the description box. All right, I'm just gonna film me swatching these because this is like a textured mousse. It sort of looks like, I want to say a rubber finish. It's got like a rubber sort of effect on it. So it's a cream blush, but it's more like a matte mousse, if that makes sense. So that's a really interesting texture. This is a traditional really high shine metallic highlighter, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call that a cream. Like technically it's a cream, but it's quite a matte finish cream. All right, I'll swatch it with my finger, but I'll sort of swatch them a little bit more diffused. There's a little bit of shimmer in this, and you can see it's not super pigmented. I feel like it's one of those products that you have to break the surface a little bit to really pick up the product. There you go. So it's almost like it's quite a warm peachy pink. But I'm really curious to see how this applies because I feel like it looks a little bit patchy. This is the highlighter. It's really bold. It's reminding me of like BOCAJ Champagne Pop sort of days. So it's a little bit bolder than what I normally go for these days, but it's a nice sort of soft champagne gold color. So in terms of the names, this was called Cream Blush. This was called Star Glow. Now we're getting onto the eyeshadows. This is what they call Inner Corner, which is beautiful. It's really like foiled. Again, like a soft gold, beautiful effect. This one's Transition, which is a really traditional transition shade, especially for a light palette. This is Crease, which is a little bit more brown toned, a little bit deeper. These swatch really nicely. I'm not sure if you can see this properly, but that's exactly why I wanted to buy it, because I swatched it in store and it looks so gorgeous. This one is called Outer Corner, which, to be fair, I wouldn't put this shade in the outer corner. Some people might, but it's more of a bronzy, shimmery shade. Very, very sparkly. These shimmery, sparkly shades remind me a little bit of the Glaminatrix Cosmetics. Is it Nearly Neutral or Nearly Natural palette? Anyway, that one that's got beautiful sort of nude, sparkly shades. It reminds me a little bit of that. And then we've got Smoke, which is a deep brown. So these, again, swatch beautifully. Look, that just kept wanting to go. They look nicely pigmented. They look like they don't apply too patchy. And for me personally, I love this on a daily basis. Also, the face products and the eye products do work quite organically. You can see that this shade and that shade almost look identical, and so do these two. So if you like a more harmonious, sort of monochromatic look, you can get it with this face palette. So this is the palette after I have swatched it. So there's nothing that has really disrupted too much. Of course, I've, you know, sort of broken into the cream a little bit, but there's nothing that looks like it's really gouged in. There's nothing that looks like it's got a lot of kick up. So it's behaving pretty nicely and it looks quite neat. I also love the big mirror because you can do your makeup in this mirror, which is fantastic. Great for a travel palette. And you've got the little protective seal, so you won't get eyeshadows going into your highlighter or your cream blush, which is fantastic. I know I don't want flecks of sparkle going into my cream blush, or, you know, flecks of dark brown going into my highlighter. So having that division was really, really smart. All right, onto application. I'm just going to use my Urban Decay Primer Potion. I keep saying not because I love this, but because I'm trying to use it up. So this is just pretty standard primer these days, but I probably should have been using my Natasha Denona one. I might actually let that set for just a smidge while I do my cheeks. I almost forgot that I'm doing like a face review, and I usually, when I do my makeup, I do my face first and then my eyes. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. Now I feel like my brush choice for the blush is probably not the best because it does seem quite firm, but I do have a Hakuhodo brush here and it's quite soft. So I'm going to see if I can pick it up on this because I don't want to go too heavy-handed with the blush, but I also feel like this texture might be a bit better with sort of like a stippling type brush. And this palette's great because I can literally see my full face in here, so I don't need to hold up another mirror. I can just hold up my palette and apply. Look, I don't know if this is going to apply much. Let's see. I'm going to really give it a bit of a scrub. So I've picked up quite a bit. This is a very, very soft natural hair brush, so it is more of a natural effect. You can see something like it's picking up, but and you can definitely see the color. So it's transferring. I might have to play with a few brushes over the next couple of days and then let you know. I think this really fluffy one is just not doing it. I picked wrong today. I'm actually going to use the same brush for my highlighter. Why dirty another one? And this one is quite dry because it is like that matte sort of mousse texture. It also has a little bit of sparkle in it. It's not like a cream finish with no shimmer in it. There's like slight flecks of shimmer, but you can't really see it on the face, which is nice. But yeah, this is pretty much dry. So I'm just going to go in with the highlighter, and I feel like if I pick up a tiny bit, I'm just worried this is going to be too intense. Again, for me these days, whoa, this sort of intense highlighter is not something I reach for on a daily basis. Oh, it's too much for me. Like the tone's really pretty. It doesn't seem to be emphasizing skin texture too much. But it is definitely very obvious, and it's not really what I go for too much on a daily basis these days. And I was hoping this would be like an everyday palette that I can just have one thing in my bathroom and just use that whenever I want a quick look. But I feel like this highlighter, although it's very beautiful, isn't a highlighter I'll just wear in my day-to-day life. All right, onto the eyes. I've got an Ella Cosmetics brush here. This is the E21 fluffy brush. I'm going to go in with the transition shade. Okay, it does pick up quite powdery, so I might tap a little bit off. I might turn this brightness down so you can see everything I'm doing. But I haven't set my primer. This is sort of my setting step, so I'm taking this quite lightly in case it sort of grips and sits a bit patchy on the primer. But so far it's looking nice and sort of spreading nice and evenly over the unset base. I did leave the base, of course, for a few minutes to dry down a little bit. I'm going to use the inner corner shade all over the lid today. So it is that sparkly one. It's the lighter of the two. I'm just going to see, oh, it's very beautiful. It does not need a really sticky base to show up or stick to. It looks nice and twinkly. I think if you want more of a metallic look, you can, you know, probably put it on a much stickier base or a glitter glue. But I think as just an everyday shadow, this is gorgeous. I do love myself a little bit of everyday shimmer. I think it just brightens the eye, makes you look a little bit more awake, which is very handy for me. And I think it just gives a bit more interest to the look. Look, come on, let's get a bit darker so you can see it. Adds a little bit more sort of dimension and interest, but it's just one simple step. So I just feel like it's pretty. Some people aren't going to vibe it. They want something a little bit smoother in texture, and that's totally cool. But for a more sparkly eyeshadow, this actually is very flattering in terms of it doesn't look chunky. It looks nice and smooth. There is a bit of fallout, but you know, that's fine. I don't mind. Like, you can't tell with the highlighter anyway. The highlighter is so bold. But the shimmer is just beautiful. I will probably do 2 more looks. So I'll probably do one where I build this up a little bit, maybe like apply it over a stickier base so it looks more intense. Today I'm going for a bit more of a natural look, and I might also use this more gold shade as a primary look as well. I'm going to probably reach for this gold shade now as the outer corner because that's what they're saying to do. I don't think it adds too much as an outer corner shade. But again, it's very pretty. It's got that same really twinkly, soft effect. It's just more sort of warmer and deeper in color. You can barely see it next to each other. They're so similar. You can barely see that I've added a second shade. So I think the direction of what the names are, I don't really vibe with, but I'm loving the effect so far. So that's that. I'm going to take the same brush, which is just a Refa 01 brush. And I'm going to go for the crease color, which is that brown. I'm going to put this in the outer corner because I think mattes just work a little bit better in the outer corner. If you want a deeper outer corner but you still want it twinkly, you just put the matte on first and then put the shimmer over the top. But I just feel like this actually changes a look, whereas the outer corner shade in this palette doesn't really change much. It's just, yeah, it's a different shimmer. I'm also going to run that on the lower lash line because I do like a bit of smokiness on the lower lash line. In person, this looks good. On camera, it looks like I've just given myself like a black eye. Or like I've just given myself bags under my eyes. So I'm going to reach for a little brush. Again, this is an Ella Cosmetics one, E28. I'm going to go for the inner corner shade. I'm just going to pop that in the inner corner and just on the inner part of the lower lash line, just to make it look a little bit more awake, because I feel like I've just made myself look like I haven't slept at all, which I think it's just the tone against my skin tone on camera, but in person it looks quite nice and quite sort of grungy smoky, which I like. I like that kind of slightly messier look. All right, to finish off this look, I'm going to do a bit of liner. I've got my Nabla Cupid's Arrow brown liner that I'm just going to put in my waterline and tight line a little bit. And I've got a MAC fluid line in Dip Brown, so it's just a dark brown gel liner, and I'm going to pop a little bit, like just a tiny wing in the outer corner with a MAC 209 SE. I think that's just a mini one brush, so just an old frayed liner brush. So I've just done that in the outer corner. I'm not actually taking the liner all the way through. It's firstly easier to do. It gives a little bit more of a natural effect while still shaping the eye. I find a liner, like a wing liner, is really good for my eye shape because I have quite downturned eyes. So putting a bit of a wing in the outer corner just sort of lifts the look. But if I line the whole thing, it starts looking a little bit bold, and I want this to look a little bit more subtle. Also, because I did do the tight lining, it's taken away that fleshy color. So it has sort of almost created a lined effect anyway, just a lot more subtle. So this sort of just doing the liner on the outer corner does sort of blend in nicely if you've got tight lining done. Little mini NARS mascara, the Climax Extreme. It's pretty bold, so I'm just going to decide if I need any on the lower lash line or if I just go the top lash line. It's made a huge difference. That mascara is not messing around. It has made a huge difference in the look. I'm just going to scrape off a little bit because this is a big wand and contains a lot of product. And just with a fairly clean part, I'm just going to do a little tiny bit on the lower lashes as well. All right, I love this eye look. This is totally a sort of like natural but put together, defined, nice, flattering eye look. I think it was very easy to achieve. I'm going to just pop on a bit of a red lip because I'm going to be filming an intro for a red lip video very soon. So this is Shiramira Amplified Red 163 shade. And this is what it looks like zoomed out. So again, just really polished eye, nice and defined, everything blended really nicely. I think the only issue I have is the sort of glitter fallout because I am seeing it sort of twinkle on my cheeks. Again, I don't care too much, but if that was a real sort of pet peeve of yours, they're like micro sparkly shades, so they are going to have a bit of twinkle fallout. I've got a little bit on my nose. Again, I don't mind it, but it is a thing. But everything seems to look quite beautiful, quite flattering. It doesn't emphasize any like eye texture I have, any wrinkles I have. Everything sort of worked really well so far. All right, just a super duper quick check-in. I'm doing a pretty simple look today using the palette. I'll talk about the eyes quickly first, but it's not what I was sort of trying to play with today. I decided to go all mattes, so I used that all over the lid, that sort of in the outer corner, a little bit on the lower lash line, this also predominantly on the lower lash line, and then I use this shade just as a little bit of a wing effect, so just to sort of like shape the eye a little bit. They applied really nicely, they're quite smooth. I'm really bad at all matte eyeshadow looks. I find that they're harder to do than shimmer ones for some reason, so my blending might not be the best and I'm in a bit of a rush. So yeah, it worked fine, it looks nice. The colors all work together. They are probably a little bit similar, like especially this one is like sort of like a mix between those two. So do you really need that one? It might have been better to have a different tone. But in terms of like the effect, it's quite nice. I did get some mascara on my lid there, so let's just focus on this one. But I'll zoom in quickly. We'll have a quick look, but it's nothing exciting. All right, that's it zoomed in. So you can see it's quite nice and soft and I don't know, blends nicely, applies nicely. Wasn't a difficult matte by any means. While we're here, let's have a quick look at the cheeks. There is a bit of a glow going on and a little bit of blush, hopefully you can see, but let's talk about that when we zoom out. All right, my goal today was try to play with different brushes with the blush. I'm struggling a little bit with it. Like it's there, but I used this sort of denser brush to get it on. Like these dense brushes are really big for the pan. Like, okay, I'll show it to you with the thing down so I'm not making a big mess, but it's like big for the pan, so it's sort of hard, it gets very messy, sort of have to scrub it because it's quite a firm sort of cream blush, and I just found that it didn't deposit much. I was going in a lot and then I was picking up foundation on my brush, putting it back in the pan, sort of sealing the pan a little bit, having to scrub it again. I also tried with a smaller brush and this picked it up probably a bit better, but then it's really hard to blend out because it's like a drier, moussey consistency, so you just sort of have like these little dots. You don't actually have a nice smooth application. So I'm still struggling with the blush. I feel like this is going to be something I'm going to struggle with for a couple more days until I give you my final thoughts on it. But I did use a smaller brush for the highlighter. I picked up just a tiny bit, blended it on, and it does look a lot more sheen-like and less sort of metallic sparkly than it did yesterday. It's still quite intense. But if you pick up the smallest amount and buff it in, you can get a more sort of glass-like effect, which I prefer over like the sparkly metallic strip. So yeah, you can get the highlighter nice. You just have to go really, really light. I literally like tapped it and then sort of buffed it, worked it in. So that's my update. But yeah, the cheeks, specifically the blush, I'm struggling with a little bit, but we'll hopefully I wrap my head around it soon. All right, we've got look number 3 and it's a bit echoey. I'm in a bathroom. It's the best lighting and my kid is currently playing on my bed where I usually film. I'm liking the eyeshadows. I think the eyeshadows are really pretty. They're easy to apply. I think there's limited color variety you can get from it. Today I'm just wearing those three here, so I sort of shifted from the lighter three to the deeper three. I put this all over the lid. I find it's best to apply, like if you want a more intense look and you don't want to apply glitter glue or anything, it's best to use your finger, just tap it on, looks quite intense, and then just use like a brush, pick up a little bit more and sort of just blend it to make it easier to blend. But it does give a nice, beautiful sort of gold, shimmery, bronzy twinkle to the eye, which is really pretty. I used that to blend it out. I used that on the lower lash line, and then in the outer corner, I went in with a darker brown and a little bit on the lower lash line as well. So it's more of a darker, sort of bronzier, sparkly eye, which is very pretty. I like it. It's my jam. I dig it. I'm still struggling with the blush. Today I used it with my fingers, even though the instructions do say use a brush. You can see that I actually had to break the pan to, like, it's almost got like this powdery hard pan on it. I feel like it's from putting the product on your face and picking up any powders or base you've got back onto the pan and sort of sealing up the pan. So I actually had to sort of smudge into the pan. It is very powdery. This is like, it's definitely a cream to powder formula, but I'm not in love with it. So on the fingers you pick up the most that I've picked up over the last couple of days, but I find that it applies a little bit patchy. So I had to do a lot of like tapping to make it doesn't blend really nicely because it's not a really smooth cream. Like you put it on and it sort of instantly goes to a sort of powdery finish, and you're there trying to like buff it out, and it does look a little bit patchy. So you get the most blushed effect using your fingers, but you can really sort of mess up the pan, which, you know, if that's what you're going to do to use it, it is what it is. But I just find on my skin and sort of my base anyway, it just looks a little bit patchy, and it takes a bit of effort to really look. It still looks patchy. All right, so today I have tried to go a little bit more glam today. I'm going out this evening, so I've tried to put a little bit of effort in. I think the eyeshadows perform really nicely. I put some glitter glue down. So I applied this color over the glitter glue. I don't think it needs it. That's what I'm going to say. I feel like it actually looks a little bit nicer, and the texture's a little bit nicer just on a normal primer, even without a primer. I feel like a glitter glue makes it look a little bit scaly, and that could be my eyes. I'm well aware. But sometimes if I foil an eyeshadow, which is applying it sort of a damp, it sort of sits a bit scaly looking on my lids. And I feel like that's what that did over glitter glue. So I don't feel like glitter glue is necessary to get a nice twinkly effect. I used all shades today. I did also put this sort of in the middle section just to sort of see how that looks more intensified over glitter glue. And you can barely tell the difference. It's all sort of muddled into one eventually over time. And I was just going to use these as sort of like the outer corner transition colors, but I decided to take that color and just put it just in the crease for a bit more dimension, because I am going out. It's going to be the evening, so I thought I'd make it a little bit more bold. So I have used all shades, and again, they perform really nicely. I do like the effect. I did decide to go in with some colored liner to make it a little bit more interesting, because these colors are quite basic and nude. I love basic and nude, and the way I like to build on basic and nude is either a bright lip or a bright liner. So I used Black Ivy from MAC. This is a gel eyeliner. It's like a metallic sort of teal color, so that's on the top lash line. And then on the waterline, I used one of the Kaleidos new multi-chrome liners. This is in the shade Limelight, so that's just on my waterline. Also, for the first time in a very long time, I'm wearing lashes. I've just put some half lashes. I've cut these Adele Glamour Wispies in half, and I put them just on the outer half just to sort of elevate the look. So the eyes are the main focus today, and I think they look really pretty. So I'll zoom in and show you the look, but then I want to discuss the cheekage area for a second. So you can see that everything blends nicely. There's no sort of like harsh edges. There's no patchiness. I don't know if you can see what I mean by like sort of scaly effect. Even though these shimmers look nice and metallic pressed onto a glitter glue, I feel like you can sort of build that sort of effect with your just putting it on with your finger and blending it out. And I feel like it's just a little bit more flattering that way. So I don't think these eyeshadows need much help to look bold. I think they are really, really nice behaved eyeshadows. You can get nice subtle looks. You can get sort of more dramatic, bold looks. And I feel like the eyeshadows are definitely the best part of this palette, in my opinion. All right, on to cheekage. I don't know if you can tell, I'm actually not wearing much bronzer here. I have the best and most blended blush application of the week using this palette. I discovered it's temperamental. It is what it is. I've discovered, I think it's base dependent. Over the past week or so, I've been trying out some new foundations that I picked up on sale. One is a L'Oreal True Match Nude and one is the original True Match. And I find these are really powdery on me. Does anyone else find them powdery? They're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be a nude radiant finish. But for me, they look like chalky, even if I don't set it with powder. Anyway, I feel like this blush, this sort of cream blush consistency, just did not want to play nice with that finish. I feel like if you've got quite a powdery base or a very set base, this putty texture blush is going to look patchy, not really stick to the face very well, and just be a little bit problematic. So this morning I actually had this foundation on. I went to put my blush on and I'm like, it is hideous. It's looking, it's like lifting my base. It's looking a little bit cakey. I then put some highlighter on to try to hide some sins and it just looked like I could see pores and I could see texture and I could see cakiness. And I was like, this is an absolute mess. So I wiped off my cheeks and chin area. So pretty much eyes down, I wiped off and I redid my base with some sunscreen and some of my concealer, blended it in, which is a nice combo. And then pretty much straight after I blended it in, I got a Nabla, this is like a buffer foundation brush. So this is a good one to sort of buff in the blush. And I messed up the pan. I'm like, I'm getting in there. I'm getting some of the product on. I tapped it in and it blended in nicely. So the first time, and this is what the 5th application, because I've done it twice today. For the first time, it actually applied really nicely and I could see the color and it worked with the base. Looked great. Then I used some highlighter. I started really lightly with just a small brush. I put a little bit on and I thought, no, bugger it, I'm going out tonight. I'm going to put a little bit more. So you can definitely build this up. You can definitely tweak the intensity of the highlighter. It's a beautiful tone. So that was my journey today. So what's my thoughts overall on this palette? I'm going to say, look, firstly, I want to just say the packaging, it's cool in theory, but as soon as you touch it, is a mucky mess, but it's still cool in theory. I don't love the top part of this palette. You can get there and in the right sort of, when the stars align and you have the right brush and the right base and the right blah, you can get the blush looking nice in your face. But I'm going to zoom in and show you like how messy this is after 5 uses, because you have to like really dig in there, because if you don't, you're not picking up the product. It's almost got like the sealed sort of dry layer that just doesn't want to come up. So I feel like this is a bit of hassle and I don't think the payoff is worth it. So for me with a cream blush, I want it to blend nicely with my base. I want it to give an effect that doesn't look like a powder blush. This just looks like a powder matte blush. What's the point of it? Like I feel like they could have either gone a little bit more creamy, a little bit more blendable, a little bit nicer to wear with a nice sort of cream finish, or just go for a powder and make it super easy to apply for everyone and make the longevity really good. What they've done is this sort of dry putty formula that is effort to apply, fades off pretty quickly throughout the day, and it's just not really worth the hassle in my opinion. So for me, this is the weakest part of the whole palette. I don't love it. And let's just zoom in and see how messy it is. Like that looks like a blush I've been attacking for a month, but that's not even a week of use trying to get this to work. So not a huge fan of this formula. They make better blushes. I don't know why that's there. In terms of the highlighter, I think it's pretty. I like the color. I think the tone works. I do want to say though that I think this blush tone, and I said it in the intro or when I swatched it, it's very pretty. It's a nice neutral color, so it will suit a lot of people. So it's a nice choice of color. I just don't like the texture of it. It's just too finicky. Can get there eventually. This is a nice effect. You get a beautiful effect. I like the tone again. It's not too cool toned. It's not too gold. It's sort of like a light gold champagne. So it's got a little bit of warmth to it, but the sheen is cool. So it's not too frosty. It's not too gold. Again, I think it's really sort of neutral and appropriate for this sort of color story in this palette. but I do think it's just a little bit sparkly and a little bit too much for what I like to wear on a daily basis. And it comes back to ease of use. I feel like you can overdo it really quickly, and these days I don't like a bold highlighted effect. So yes, you can sheer it out and make it look really pretty, but again, there's a learning curve and you've got to sort of get it right. Otherwise you can go over the top. So again, it's pretty. I get why people like it. I've seen people say that it's beautiful, and I totally get that. But for me, it doesn't tick all boxes of what I like to wear on a daily basis. So yeah, I'm not amazed by the top two. The eyeshadows I really like. I think the formula is really lovely. I think the shimmers give a beautiful brightness to the eye, so you can build it up, apply it with your finger, have it look a little bit more bold and metallic, which is really lovely for going out, looking a little bit more focused on the eyes. And the mattes are really nice and soft and blendable as well. They're not the most pigmented in the world, but I feel like for the shades, they're not supposed to be. They do their job, they shape the eye, they support the shimmers, they work on their own if you just want a matte look, and I feel like the formula is really, really nice and really easy. Whereas I find the face products aren't easy to sort of get right every time. I feel like the eyeshadows are. So I really like that about the eyeshadows, and that's what I like. Well, that's what I want from a palette like this. This is not a cheap palette. If I'm gonna buy a face palette with a blush, a highlighter, and eyeshadows, I sort of want to be able to bring this with me after the pool, if I want to quickly do some makeup, if I want to go on an airplane at 6 a.m. and do my makeup at the airport, I want to bring this with me. If I want to go away for a weekend, I want to bring it with me. If I want a quick 2-minute makeup look in my car, I want to bring it with me. This format, in my opinion, and at this price point, should look good and be easy to apply. And I feel like that's the least you should expect for a face palette at this price point, with this sort of boring color story. You want this because you know that you can do your makeup in 5 minutes and it's going to look good. That's the whole point of why I like these sort of boring but high quality face palettes. That's the draw card for me anyway. So if I'm spending 5 minutes trying to make the blush work, or spend 3 minutes blending out my highlighter so I don't look like I'm from 2016 where the strip of highlighter was the thing to do. Yeah, if I'm doing that, it's not serving the purpose that I want it to serve, if that makes sense. I think the eyeshadows are there. You can literally throw on one of the eyeshadows with your finger if you want without a primer, and you can get a really beautiful look that lasts really well throughout the day. But it's the top two that I just don't vibe with. I think they're just a little bit high maintenance and not consistently reliable for this format. My only criticism about the eyeshadows is that the colors are quite redundant. Whether you choose this shimmer, that matte, they sort of all create the same look. So I feel like they could have diversified the shades a little bit. And I think where I would have liked it to go is maybe instead of this being just a deeper version of that, but a similar tone, like a goldy champagne, if they just made that more of a taupe, so like a cooler tone with a little bit more gray tone to it, and then made one of these a little bit more gray toned, so you've got a cool look, a warm look, something to deepen things up, all of a sudden you can have distinct color stories, whereas you don't get that with this. This is just like a gradiating, same colors, creating the same sort of looks, and if you reach for that matte or that matte or that matte, it's just going to tweak the look very, very slightly. It's not going to actually make that big a difference, which you probably could tell throughout this review. So yes, very, very boring, but very reliable, very easy to wear, and the looks are pretty. They're just not very versatile. So overall, do I like this palette? I could just say that I wanted to like it more. I think that's sums up how I feel about it. I feel like even though you can get some really pretty looks with this, especially the eyes, I'm going to be forcing myself to use it on a regular basis. I think I'm going to have to put this in my travel makeup bag. So whenever I'm doing my makeup on the run, or seeing my parents, which is weekly or fortnightly, I force myself to use this because I'm not blown away by it. I think I had quite high expectations for this and it just didn't quite deliver. In terms of price point, I just want to make it clear that I bought this before the price went up. I think in Australia this is like $90 something now. I think it was like $70 something, and I managed to get a friend who works in like the beauty field. She bought it with a pro discount, so I actually got this even cheaper. And I still feel like I'm not really blown away by the quality for the price that I paid for it. The fact that it went up to like 90 something dollars, I would not personally pay that for this, just personally. I think the best part about it is the eyeshadows and these mini palettes, which granted the pan sizes are slightly smaller, but this is the mini Glam palette, and this is like, I think it's like $41 or $42 in Australia. So it's less than half price of this. And I think I'll be reaching for this mainly for the eyeshadows. I would just prefer to buy one of these. I feel like this one anyway has more versatility in the color range than this one does. The quality of them are both very nice, but you're paying less than half. And I think I bought this when it was like 20% off at Sephora. Less than half for all of this. And I just find the top for me a letdown. So I do like the looks I've created throughout this video, mainly the eye looks. But my take home message would be, it's not worth the 90 something dollars. At the very least, look for a 20% off sale, if not more, if you're interested in this. I just thought it was, yeah, slightly disappointing, but pretty nonetheless. All right, so that's my review, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.